with what it is that the government is proposing, and if he could also provide his thoughts in regards to, from my perspective, getting it to committee sooner as opposed to later.
The honourable member for Rivière-du-Nord. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to thank my colleague for his question and his comments. I said that I really welcome this bill, but we'll have to work on it further. There are things that have to be amended and should be. And I agree on the issue of the deepfakes. It doesn't really make sense. We have to really tackle this issue. It's a new problem for our society in 2026, and we have to tackle it. But I don't want us to lose reality in all this. The government has a responsibility. The House of Commons will take its responsibilities on as well. And I hope we'll be able to do so because we don't want to filibuster at Justice Committee, and we want to adopt this bill quickly. But we also have to make sure that the provinces have the means to fight this issue upstream. We have to work on education and awareness and allow our young people to have discussions around this. We have to make sure that we have harmony in our schools once again. We need to talk about respect and awareness. It's federal and provincial jurisdiction. The federal government can play a role by freeing up funds for the provinces so we can work effectively on this issue upstream of these issues by amending the criminal code.
Thomas, the honourable member for Langley Township, Fraser Heights.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you to the member for Rivière-du-Nord. Enjoyed serving with him on the Justice Committee when I was there in the last Parliament. I'm happy that he raised the issue of the Jordan Principle. You know, from time to time, there are delays in criminal trials, and the Supreme Court weighed in with a case called Jordan, setting minimum timelines. Now, that hits home to me because there was a high-profile murder in the Metro Vancouver area.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are officially back for question period. Parliament is officially back. Everything is back in motion. We're live on YouTube, Rumble, and Kick for the first of many days to come of debate, question period, and everything else that's going to happen. Who knows? Right now, we're looking at the House of Commons. They are debating a Victims Act. It was getting a little heated there, but moving onward here, we have a Moose on the Loose video, which I'm going to get into right now. And then we should be heading into question period in the next half hour, roughly.
And want our government to chart a new path.
Carney's got a new plan. Welcome back to Moose and Loose. My name's David. Later today, we'll be seeing Mark Carney announcing his plan to try to win back taxpayers. It's a cheeky little tax cut. We also have Quebec pissed off at Mark Carney for his speech in Davos. Got some other stuff here. Let's jump into this. We've got Mark Carney's itinerary for first day back in Parliament, and well, it looks like he won't be in the House of Commons. He'll be announcing his GST tax cut, which we'll get to in a second here, and he'll be meeting with Doug Ford because he pissed off Doug Ford. Interesting, he's getting some of that one-on-one time that Ford loves so much. Now, I wonder if he'll be mentioning anything with this. We've got AI Minister Evan Solomon saying this.
I will also note that the Privacy Commissioner has started an investigation into X. And again, there was already an investigation before, but he's added an investigation.
So they're investigating X some more, and a little update on the whole Grok situation and the ability to put anyone in a bathing suit. They removed that. It's actually very strict now. You can't put anyone in a bathing suit, anything even remotely close to a bathing suit. So they have cracked down on that. You don't see it all over X anymore. So what are they investigating? And we got this one here. Montreal's wood burning ban starts on October 1st. What a joke. Here we've got Mark Carney leaving for the day. This is yesterday. He's asked about the CUSMA renegotiations. He doesn't care.
Prime Minister, how is your spat with Trump impacting the CUSMA review? What do you think of Trump's comments calling you governor?
Proceeding calmly, comprehensively, and we look forward to engaging in negotiations as they come.
So what do you think going to impact CUSMA at all?
He doesn't care. But what he did tell us there, or what he showed us, was some body language. So he just goes out the door. Nothing happens here. Look at his body language. When he asked about CUSMA, he gives one of these. Sideways chop.
What do you think of Trump's comments calling you governor?
Proceeding, call
One,
me,
two, three of them. This is not a body language of something's going well. This is it's not going well. It's done. It's you're out. He's basically saying it's not happening. At least that's what I take from that. No normal person does a sideways chop like that when something's going good. When something's going good, you do this. Thumbs up or some sort of upward hand gesture. So I'm not buying it. Nothing's happening there. What we do know is Carney's coming out with this today. He's going to introduce a grocery rebate. That's right. He's going to save Canada with his grocery rebate. Federal government to introduce grocery rebate. It says here GST credit on Monday is part of a larger suite of affordability measures intended to offset the rising cost of groceries. Yeah, how about you stop spending so much money we don't have and stop jacking up inflation? Two senior government sources speaking on the condition, didn't want to be named, said quarterly GST payments will increase by 25% over the next 5 years. The measure is expected to affect approximately 12 million Canadians. That's right, everyone's going to get our 10 cents off Shake and Bake coupon soon. In reality, it's not 10 cents off Shake and Bake. It says $400 for a calendar year or $33 a month. Yeah, that doesn't do anything when literally the price of a lot of goods have doubled in price. Now, what I thought was interesting is that CTV came out with this panel here talking about how bad food is, the food crisis, food banks, all this kind of stuff. And this is the day before, but I mean, right at the same time Mark Carney comes out with a grocery rebate. Why is this so conveniently timed? Like, oh, we have this big problem. Oh, look, it's Mark Carney to the rescue with $33 a month. I don't know. A little bit fishy.
And then they will also at times point to sort of the constrained fiscal environment they feel they're operating in thanks to the economic crisis we face vis-a-vis the United States. What is your response to that? Like, what is the significance of what you...
When in reality, it's the own economic crisis the liberals created, not the Americans. The Americans will Donald Trump. It's just the icing on the cake. This is all the liberals' fault here.
You hope they do against that backdrop?
So what I'm bringing, as I said, and I take it's a huge responsibility to bring these voices to government, but what we're seeing is also a crisis. 2.2 million visits to food banks every single month. Food banks cannot continue to absorb an ever-increasing number of folks who come to our doors.
And that's just it. We can't. We have to get rid of this corrupt government. The system is being taken advantage of by newbies so they can most certainly afford food. I see it all the time at a local food bank. And as people are complaining here, there's...
That's what I was thinking of. How many people are abusing the system? Yeah, there's definitely people who need it, and the cost of things is out of control now. How many people are abusing that to get free stuff?
Spending billions of our dollars overseas, foreign affairs, far-off ripoff, our money just disappearing abroad. Now, what we are seeing is after Mark Carney's speech in Davos, he pissed off a lot of Quebecers because he essentially rewrote history of Quebecers in his speech, and they didn't like that. PQ leader says Mark Carney has effectively launched referendum campaign. So what we're talking about is this. Speaking earlier in the week about the Plains of Abraham in Quebec City, Carney described the 1759 battle as the start of a partnership between French and English people in Canada and called for national unity. A new political cycle has indeed begun. A new chapter in our history is opening before us, said the PQ leader. Mr. Carney, Quebec does not exist because of Canada. In fact, Quebec has survived in its difference and specificity despite Canada, he added, to a standing ovation. He goes on to say the tradition is one of falsifying facts in history and constantly feeding us lies through federal institutions. He said, we will break with British colonialism and create our own country. Got Terry Newman here from the National Post, senior editor, posting this. Carney's speech did not go over well with Quebecers yesterday. It horribly offended them and was more values word salad. He's also figured out that many Canadians love empty flattery. So we've got a string here of stuff. English Canada and our US counterparts have not realized yet how much a misstep Carney has made in Quebec. When the British troops took over Laville, France, in Quebec City as part of a great partnership, it was actually a bloody forced traumatic invasion on Le Plains d'Abraham where he was giving his speech, not sitting well in Quebec. We got Steph here breaking this down. Basically, this battle here at Abraham was never a moment of collaboration, saying rewriting this defeat as a founding moment to be celebrated is an insult to the memory of Quebecers. Looks like they didn't vet Carney's speech all that well before he gave it. So Mark Carney is really fueling the fire here, and I wonder if he wants to fuel that fire. Does he want to get rid of Alberta out of Canada because then he'd have a liberal majority forever? I can't see him wanting Quebec to separate, but I mean, who knows what's going to happen here? What is his plan? Is this just a side effect of it, a nasty side effect he doesn't want? Moving ahead, we got a panel here on CTV. This one wraps up with one of the most wild statements ever by Kathleen Monk.
Scott, I'll start with you. The Prime Minister stopped to talk to reporters today, didn't engage too much on any communications with Trump, just kind of downplayed actually how significant whatever happened with China was. What does that tell you, and how big of a deal do you think this is politically for him?
Well, it's significant, but I thought the Prime Minister's tone was bang on and appropriate, because look, Donald Trump is a presidential equivalent of a metal spoon in the microwave these days. He's sparking and lighting up all over the place. It's not just Canada. He unloaded 70 True Social postings. So he's lashing out at everyone. We have to take serious his posting and his suggestion that he may oppose a 100% across the board tariffs, but I'm not sure that it is a serious threat. And in that context, taking a bit of time, pointing out that Canada is not negotiating a free trade agreement with China, as Minister LeBlanc did, pointing out, as the Prime Minister did, that there would be severe downsides to Donald Trump actually taking that kind of action. Imagine the increase in the price of gas at the pump for Americans. So taking a breath, not panicking, just being steady and sensible seems to me to be the right play at this moment, particularly as you look at the broader context with how Donald Trump is conducting himself, the isolation he's experiencing internationally, and the divisions he's provoking domestically.
I mean, that should be the approach for any prime minister, if it was a conservative one, and an NDP one, if we had one, or a liberal one, is just to have a steady hand here. We can't rock the boat with Donald Trump. They have way too much power. We're too weak right now. And what's Carney doing? The exact opposite. Pissing him off, poking him in the eye, insulting him at the WF, at recognizing Palestine, everything possible to piss him off, because he needs that majority. He needs a scary Donald Trump.
Yeah, it's interesting because on the face of it, when you see a threat like that from a U.S. president, James, to Scott's point, you have to take it seriously. At the same time, we're just a few months, a few weeks out from the last tariff threat of an additional 10% that Trump levied against us, which was supposed to come because of that Ronald Reagan ad, and then was never spoken of again.
An important point that you just made. Donald Trump has threatened 3 times more tariffs than he's actually ever imposed. So the keep calm, carry on prose of the Prime Minister is the appropriate response. You can't react to everything Donald Trump says and does, but you do have to respond as a nation. And the Prime Minister...
What is James saying here? The keep calm and carry on of what Carney's doing? He's not keeping calm. He's intentionally insulting Donald Trump to piss him off. He wasn't calm at that speech. He could have come out with a speech and just talked in general about how they want to secure NATO nations or secure the world or reduce general threats or the Ukraine-Russia conflict. But instead, he dedicated the entire thing to attacking Donald Trump and hegemon, constantly using the word hegemon, the dominant force that can't be stopped, that are creating all these rules and bullying everybody, the hegemony, the Americans bulldozing their way through. Nobody can stop them. I challenge a reporter, Mackenzie Gray, Kate McKenna, any of these ones that have access to Mark Carney. Ask Mark Carney, how do you feel that you voted to move the headquarters of Brookfield to the heart of the hegemony? Mark Carney's a hypocrite.
Mr. obviously had a very good moment in Davos, to the point where you have Pierre Poilievre, for the first time, I think, ever, praising a sitting Liberal Prime Minister, because Pierre Poilievre recognizes the moment, and the Prime Minister seems to recognize the moment coming out of his cabinet retreat, that it's time to pivot and move forward and not be disappointed, be internally angry, be publicly stoic. And then when Parliament comes back, and as we move forward, there's never been a bigger barn door open for the Prime Minister of this country, with a union of solidarity behind him that is nonpartisan, to go forward and do big things and be significant about that. The Super Bowl is around the corner, a couple weeks away. We're supposed to have these sort of installments of major projects across the country. There's a moment here for the Prime Minister to do something really significant and show Canadians that we are united and we're doing big things as a country.
I don't think James has ever visited www.moosechart.com, but he probably should, and get a little refresher on who Mark Carney is and what he's doing, because he's not planning on doing big things unless it's going to enrich himself. And most of the stuff is just going to tank our economy.
It will be a really interesting, it feels like, Kathleen, return to Parliament tomorrow for exactly the reason that James lays out. The opportunity for the government is massive. To the point about Pierre Poilievre, there's a ton of rhetoric from the opposition, including the Conservatives, actually, at this moment, about advancing those priorities together, which is not something, to be honest, that on any side you normally hear ahead of a return to Parliament, at least not in the last little while.
And it speaks to the change in tone and what's needed, right? And that tone shift for the Conservatives is remarkable, that they're willing to cooperate, possibly do joint negotiations with the U.S. But what I found interesting from this morning and the Prime Minister was really the pushback that he got from one journalist. He got basically one question put to him this morning, and it was, have you mortgaged Canadians' affordability because you've angered Trump, and bringing it back to those key issues that Canadians care about like how people are struggling day to day. And Wap Canoe said it best in your best last interview, which was just like, he's got to do all the things at all the time, Prime Minister Carney. He's got to deal with the affordability threats, the political threats, and the electoral instability that the minority is, and then also deal with the geopolitical stuff. But I think what was fascinating is that he did say this morning, the Prime Minister, that there would be some affordability measures coming soon. So what are they?
So that's the one I just mentioned, the GST, $33 a month. It's a whole lot of nothing. And if Mark Carney really cared about this whole situation, affordability, he wouldn't be spending more money. He would be making cuts and reducing inflation and not blowing wide open a big new deficit, carrying on the tradition from Justin Trudeau.
Are they on the agenda? How does he deal with the Conservatives' pushback on affordability, immigration, crime? Can he solve those political challenges so if there is an election, the Liberals are poised to do better or at least answer that big question of affordability on the problem? We've seen them cut taxes in the past. Will they do more in the future?
Yeah, to what degree, Scott, do you think there needs to be like something tangible on that front? I know we're all consumed at this sort of esoteric level with everything going on with the United States and moral clarity and all those things, but like people are worried about the same thing they were worried about last year and the year before, a lack of affordability.
I'm not sure now's the exact moment where we need to just, stencil a check and send it to every household. I don't know that that's the appropriate response. I think giving voice to the concerns.
It's funny. That's exactly what they're doing. $33. Here you go. We saved your life now, guys, right? You can vote for us now. What a joke.
People have, making certain that Canadians don't watch the Prime Minister see how he's involved in these discussions, both internationally and across the border with Donald Trump, and worry that maybe the Prime Minister and the government have forgotten about the daily struggles that people are experiencing. You got to make certain that you address that. You got to make certain that you connect all of this instability that stems from Trump with the challenges that people are feeling and with your policy remedies. But I don't know that they need to do something in the immediate term, again, in a panicky way. And that really is not the recipe the Prime Minister tends to follow. I think more important than anything, we shouldn't underestimate the connection that Canadians themselves make between Donald Trump's erraticism and their own economic situation. I do think Canadians lay this at the feet of Donald Trump, and that's why it was smart of Pierre Poilievre to ignore all those conservatives who are jamming the pages of the National Post with numbskull commentary, trying to align themselves and, say, actually Trump's right. That is not the play that Pierre Poilievre supported. He knows that that is electoral disaster, and instead saying we got to chart a similar course.
He's right there. In this environment, Pierre came out and said, we will work with the Liberals to get things done. He pushed back on Trump and his comments in Afghanistan. I'll show that next, because he knows how Canadians get all amped up. They get the TDS. They don't know what to think. They don't think rationally about the whole situation with Trump. We're in this bad situation because of the Liberals, with the icing on the cake here coming from...
The sad fact of the reality, that's the honest truth. Everybody just hears the name and they instantly freak out. So there's nothing you can do. And it's on both sides of the aisle. It's conservatives and liberals that freak out when you talk about Trump. So yeah, Poilievre had to take the safe route with that one. I just don't like how we're running away from the States to buddy up with China. I think that's just absolutely horrendous. And there's people here in Canada that believe China is a better country than the United States, and I don't even know anymore. I don't even know what to say anymore to that. It's just lunacy. It's crazy to think that. You are so out of touch if you actually think China is a better country than the US. My God, dude, China spies on their own people. They have social credit scores. Journalists that were following Mark Carney had to use burner phones because they were being spied on, or potentially being spied on. I don't know how many times CSIS and other government organizations have mentioned foreign interference with China. Mark Carney claiming that China was the #1 national security threat. Now he's running to them, buddying up. It's just... There's a plan. There's a grand scheme. Everybody could speculate, whatever, but I don't know at the end of the day. We're heading down a very fucking weird path, though, that's for sure, when we are running to China.
from Trump. But of course, liberals are blaming all of it on Trump. All the past 10 years, the economic failures of Justin Trudeau and now Mark Carney is all being placed on Donald Trump. There's no real way to rationalize with these liberals. It's best to just take a pro-Canada stance like Pierre's done and try to get as many of the swing voters as possible. We got Aaron Gunn pushing back against Trump's comments and our troops, NATO's troops over there. While I might not be politically correct, I feel something needs to be said regarding President Trump's recent comments that diminished the contributions of NATO allies in Afghanistan and suggested NATO countries stayed a little back from the front lines during the conflict. So he goes on to mention, how many people were wounded and ended, and Canadian troops were not on the back lines, and as well as other NATO troops were not on the back lines. The UK suggest otherwise is insulting, outrageous, and completely unacceptable to more than 40,000 Canadians who served during the Afghan war. And that's in regards to this here. Stayed a little off the front lines.
So it is an interesting perspective to say that European troops, or certainly British troops, were nowhere near the front line. As I say, that wasn't my experience.
So there's a British troop saying this. And Pierre Poilievre coming out with the same thing here. President Trump must know that after 9/11 terror lord attacks on America, over 40,000 brave Canadians fought tooth and nail in Afghanistan over 13 years. They did so on the front lines in the most dangerous districts in the mountains of Tora Bora to the deserts of Kandahar. 158 of them paid the ultimate price. Thousands suffered the scars. We thank them, we honor them, remember them. Our American friends should too. So this is very well said, very statesman-like response. And this is typical Trump. He over-embellishes things or brings down other situations. But when you're talking about troops and fighting back, that's where you start to piss off people, especially when it comes to military.
Crystallize it in one line. Americans are watching as President Trump chooses to kidnap and kill his own citizens as opposed to lowering prices. Canadians are watching that in horror and want our government to chart a new path.
Well, that was quite the gear shift. Holy shit. Just flat out on live television. Holy crap.
Terry.
Crystallize it in one line. Americans are watching as President Trump chooses to kidnap and kill his own citizens as opposed to lowering prices. Canadians are watching that in horror and want our government to chart a new path and a new way forward.
Okay, I'm going to leave.
Wow. So I have been looking around. There are people sending this to Donald Trump, wondering if he's going to sue the daylights out of Kathleen Monk for making such a statement. Now, what I think she's talking about is what happened with ICE agents ending someone. I can show you the basics here. I can't play the whole video, but basically there was a couple of people, I think, blocking the road. This lady, and then there's a guy next to her. So ICE agents come out and push them off the street. So this guy here was also blocking. He was also trying to shield her. He gets maced in the face, and this just escalates because this guy here has a pew-pew that these ICE agents don't know about. So I think he's trying to help her up. Then they both fall down.
What's wrong with you? Honestly.
So now you've got 4 or 5 ICE agents trying
to... Why can't people just stay home? What a fucking... Another situation like this after, 2 weeks ago? Just stay home. Don't get in the way of federal agents. This is insane. You don't see people here in Canada doing this. What the fuck, man?
To arrest this guy.
Yeah.
One of these guys says he's got a pew-pew. This guy here, I think, grabs it and then runs this way. Now, I've heard 2 different versions of this story. One is that when he's running away, the pew-pew accidentally discharges, and then what I can't show you is these guys then start pew-pewing this guy on the ground and end him, which is what we see here. I can't play any of it, but the guy's done. Other angles, people are saying that a pew-pew bounces off the ground here, meaning that the guy on the ground...
I honestly hate how Moose on the Loose constantly fucking censors himself. He does it with the dumbest shit, too, to remain monetized and, advertiser-friendly. And it's just, holy shit, man. It drives me crazy. Just say gun. It's a gun. That's what it is. He says, 4th grade things to get around the censorship or whatever it is. He doesn't need to censor himself. People are monetized on this platform saying horrendous shit all the time. Just saying. It's crazy the levels he goes to. Fucking drives me crazy sometimes.
Pulled out a pew pew and started using it. I don't know what's true. I don't know what is what aside from this video, and there's a couple other angles where the guy over here is running this direction with a pew pew in his hand, but I don't know if it's his or if he got it from that guy. There's a whole lot of confusion here, and I'm just going to leave it at that. But this looks awful for the Trump administration. So I'm pretty sure that's what Kathleen Monk is referring to here, but her statements are wild.
Americans are watching as President Trump chooses to kidnap and kill his own citizens as opposed to lowering prices. Canadians are watching that in horror and want our government to chart a new path and a new way forward.
Kidnap and end their own citizens. Coming from someone whose organization has spent millions of dollars to slander Pierre Poilievre, she has no right to be on national television running her mouth ever.
Epidemic. That declaration reflected what survivors, advocates, and frontline workers have all known. This violence is systemic, patterned, and too often predictable. Bill C-16 meets that reality head-on. Under its first pillar, this bill takes decisive action to prevent violence before it becomes lethal. For the first time in Canadian law, it creates a new offense for a pattern of coercive and controlling conduct towards an intimate partner. Survivors have told us repeatedly that abuse is rarely about one single incident. It is about isolation, intimidation, surveillance, financial control, and psychological manipulation. These patterns strip away safely the autonomy long before physical violence appears. By naming coercive control as a criminal offense, Bill C-16 gives law enforcement and the courts a tool to intervene earlier when lives can still be saved. This bill also recognizes the severity of violence driven by control and fear by providing that murders committed in the context of coercive control, sexual violence, human trafficking, or hate, femicide, when committed against a woman, is now going to be treated as a first-degree murder. And even where traditional planning and deliberation are difficult to prove, this reflects the lived reality of many of the intimate.
Yeah, I'm looking for something else in the meantime, because we've got roughly 20 minutes before question period starts. I mean, statements by members technically starts in 5 minutes, but I don't want to watch that. Just a bunch of virtue signaling.
For manslaughter committed in those same circumstances. Mr. Speaker, these reforms closely align with the work being done on the ground by organizations like Be the Peace Institute in Nova Scotia. Be the Peace focuses on root causes of gender.
All right, we got this right here. Hold on. Oh, no. Looks like YouTube took it down. No way. Fox News uploaded a agitators escalate riot at Minneapolis hotel looking for ICE, and the content isn't available anymore. Or is it?
All right, 8 minutes after the hour, happening today.
Okay, maybe it is available. I don't know what happened there. That was weird. Were the comments turned off? No, the comments are here and everything. That was weird. Holy crap. That was weird. Got that on stream.
A judge will hold a hearing on the evidence surrounding the CBP-involved shooting in Minnesota.
It comes as tensions continue to rise in that state. Protesters were seen overnight. They were trying to violently break into that hotel because they think that ICE agents are staying there.
Matt Finn is back live in Minneapolis with the details. Matt.
Yeah, and Griff, this has been going on for weeks where these agitators target hotels where they think immigration agents are staying. I actually did a ride along with a Border Patrol agent, and he told us point blank that they experienced this. The agitators show up. They make as much noise as possible, trying to prevent immigration agents from getting any sleep or rest. And this latest riot happened last night at a Minneapolis Hilton. Protesters banged on trash cans. They slammed snow shovels, blew whistles, and tried to force their way in. Minnesota State Police say officers surrounded the hotel, and when things turned violent, federal agents arrived.
Saturday was a pretty crazy day. There was a lot going on. A lot of protests, a lot of riots breaking out. Tons of tear gas and pepper spray, and it was Portland, Minneapolis. I believe there was one in California, the LA area in that district there. The government district, I can't remember exactly what the name of it is, but everything happens there in LA when it comes to the protests. It was a pretty wild night.
And used tear gas. Now, one federal agent was seen bloodied. 2 people were reportedly taken into custody. This violent demonstration comes after various angles of video are emerging, appearing to show the...
And I guess it carried over into Sunday as well. I can't believe they went to... Yeah, there's the thing we saw earlier. I can't believe they went to the hotel. Literally had to block people from coming in. Looks like the place was vandalized. What a disaster.
Governor Walz and the Mayor Jacob Fry and other elected Democrats were spreading lies about federal...
I'm going to skip right to the question part of this here.
As I pointed out, is exactly what has brought us to this position today, where you have elected Democrat officials across the country who are encouraging left-wing agitators and crazy people to go out and unlawfully obstruct lawful immigration enforcement. Again, these brave men and women of ICE and Border Patrol and the federal enforcement are just trying to do their jobs to enforce our nation's immigration laws and to go after the worst of the worst in this country. I would encourage everyone in this room, and I would encourage the Arizona Attorney General to look at the video of an ICE agent in Minneapolis. He was approached by left-wing agitators who were honking their horns and were screaming slurs at him, and he rolled down his window and he said, "What are you doing? I am out here trying to catch a child predator, somebody who has convicted crimes against an innocent child, and you are trying to obstruct me from doing my job." This rhetoric against ICE, comparing them to Nazi Gestapo, Donald Trump's police force, is despicable, it is shameful, and it is precisely what has led to the escalation of tensions in Minneapolis and in other places across the country. Gabe, go ahead.
For justifying violence.
I would defer you to the Department of Justice on that.
Thank you, Caroline.
Gabe.
Regarding Minnesota, on Saturday, the Department of Homeland Security posted that Preddy looks like he wanted to do maximum damage and massacre law enforcement. Stephen Miller on Saturday posted that, or called Preddy a would-be assassin. Why did administration officials jump to conclusions before an investigation had even been conducted?
Well, look, this has obviously been a very fluid and fast-moving situation throughout the weekend. As for President Trump, whom I speak for, he has said that he wants to let the investigation continue and let the facts lead in this case.
With regards to the deployment of Tom Homan to Minneapolis, should the deployment of Mr. Homan to Minneapolis be seen as a sign that the president is dissatisfied with how the officials on the ground had handled the incident?
No, Mr. Homan is doing an exceptional job, and he has been working with Secretary Noem and President Trump over the course of the last year. Secretary Noem still has the utmost confidence and trust of the President of the United States, and she's continuing to oversee the entire Department of Homeland Security and all of the immigration enforcement that's taking place across the whole entire country. Of course, Secretary Noem is also in charge of FEMA, and we are in the wake of a brutal winter storm where hundreds of thousands of Americans have been impacted by that. So Borders-Czar Homan is in a unique position to drop everything and go to Minnesota to continue having these productive conversations with state and local officials. And I know that he's catching a plane in just a few hours to do just that at the request of the president. Jennifer.
On Saturday's shooting, has the president been briefed, and have you been briefed on specific details of the shooting? How many shots were fired? How many guns discharged? And I mean, did the protesters' gun go off, or only the officers' guns? Do you have any of those details?
Again, the investigation is continuing, Jennifer, and we will let the facts lead, and we will let the facts play out in this investigation. I do know that HSI and FBI are conducting interviews with those that were involved and the agents who were involved in this unfortunate tragedy on Saturday.
Are they keeping the president up to date on all those details?
The president is obviously very much on the ball with respect to this investigation. I think he's made that quite clear with the various statements that you've seen him put out, and also the 4 points that the president has outlined as well to Governor Walz, and to encourage him to cooperate with ICE and with the administration. Mary.
Thanks, Caroline. To follow on Gabe's question, Secretary Noem said Alex Preddy committed an act of domestic terrorism. Stephen Miller labeled Preddy a domestic terrorist. Does the president agree with them?
Look, as I've said, I have not heard the president characterize Mr. Preddy in that way. However, I have heard the president say he wants to let the facts in the investigation lead itself.
Was he alarmed to hear his top officials referring to him in that way, rushing to that judgment?
Danny, go ahead.
Thanks, Caroline. On Stephen Miller's comments, will Stephen Miller be apologising to the family of Alex Pretty for calling him, quotes, an assassin who tried to murder federal agents, despite the fact that, as you say, this is still under investigation?
Look, again, this incident remains under investigation, and nobody here at the White House, including the President of the United States, wants to see Americans hurt or killed and losing their lives in American streets. And we mourn for the parents. As a mother myself, of course, I cannot imagine the loss of life, especially losing one's child. And that same empathy from the President goes for the parents of angel families, parents of victims of illegal alien crime across our country as well. And that's exactly why the President continues to be wholeheartedly committed to deporting the worst of the worst criminals from our country. Why don't we go to the back? Kelly.
Does the president believe that the killing, though, was a mistake? Has he expressed that at all?
Again, the president has said, you know, we have to review it, and this investigation needs to continue, and he's letting the facts on the investigation lead itself.
Does he want body camera footage to be released to the public? Now,
that's not something I've heard the president commit to, so I won't do that from the podium. Sure.
Carrie, how serious is the administration taking allegations that local and state officials in Minnesota are actively coordinating with demonstrators through encrypted or non-encrypted communications, as well as providing government resources to impede immigration enforcement operations?
I'm sorry, Carrie, could you repeat your question?
How serious is the administration taking allegations that local and state Minnesota officials are communicating with demonstrators to basically impede immigration officials?
Well, we've definitely seen active organization amongst these left-wing groups, Carrie, and it is something that I know the FBI and the Department of Justice are looking into. Again, it is illegal to unlawfully obstruct lawful immigration enforcement in this country, and these agitators are making it nearly impossible for ICE to do their jobs and for federal law enforcement to carry out the will of the American people to deport the worst of the worst. I would just encourage everyone to please imagine in this room, all of you come to the White House every day to report on the President of the United States and the administration. You come into this briefing room, you walk through the gates of the White House. Just imagine if there were left-wing agitators or agitators of any kind who were in your face, who were doxing you, who were harassing you, who were physically threatening you, who were biting off your fingers in the case of two Border Patrol agents we saw this past week.
I saw the photo of the finger in the jar. It's real. It happened. It's absolutely awful. What kind of lunatics are out there? These people need to be put in like an insane asylum or something. It's real. Bit off the tip of this dude's finger and they just had it in a jar. It's absolutely disgusting. I wish I didn't see it, but it happened. It wasn't pretty.
And with you, your struggle is just, your sacrifice will not be in vain, and your future belongs to you, not the tyrants. Today, the world watches. Tomorrow, rises a free Iran, and an Iran whose future belongs to its people.
Here, here. I would remind the member we're not supposed to be using props. L'honorable député.
The Honourable Member for Marc-Aurèle-Fortin. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good afternoon. After a few weeks in our ridings and a break from parliamentary business, we're back in the House of Commons, ready for a new year of work. I'd like to wish all of my colleagues a very happy new year. In 2025, we delivered tangible results, a more resilient economy, strategic investments to strengthen our industries, and clear measures to protect Canada's interests. We've chosen to take action, and we are strengthening our economic sovereignty. And we are supporting innovation here at home. As we begin this session, the message is simple. We will continue to invest, continue to protect our country, and continue to move forward with a strong Canada. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Prince Albert.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to congratulate Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe for not letting the Prime Minister sacrifice canola and pulse producers. Saskatchewan farmers know that market access to China has been low on the list of priorities for these Liberals. Thankfully, the Premier understands the simple truth. If you want to grow the Canadian economy, you must sell to the world. While the Premier is doing his part, the same cannot be said about this Liberal government. Trade deals are as strong as logistic networks supporting them. Exporters continue to face congested ports, limited rail capacity, and aging infrastructure. Years of underinvestment and regulatory delays have made Canada an unreliable supplier in the eyes of our trading partners. If the Prime Minister truly believes in expanding access to global markets, he must commit to serious, sustained modernization of our ports, rails, and export infrastructure. Saskatchewan knows how to sell to the world. Government must now do its part to expand markets.
The honourable member for Kanata.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to recognize the extraordinary courage of the Iranian people who continue to stand for their dignity, their freedoms, and their fundamental right to determine their own future. The Iranian regime's brutal use of violence, arbitrary detention, and intimidation against peaceful protesters must end. Here in Canada, many Iranian Canadians are watching these events unfold and are heartbroken, worried for loved ones, grieving for those lost, and longing for a future free from fear. Canada's position is unequivocal. We condemn the Iranian regime's ongoing abuses and are in close coordination with our international partners to hold those responsible to account. To the people of Iran and to Iranian communities here in Canada, you are not alone. Canada stands with you. We hear your voices and we will not look away. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Elgin St Thomas, London South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Tens of thousands of Canadians have been reaching out to members of Parliament over the winter break, telling the Liberals to set aside their divisive and toxic Bill C-9 and to stand up for the fundamental rights and freedoms of Canadians.
Let's go.
I'm pleased to report that today at the Justice Committee, we were finally able to get the Liberals to agree to set aside this divisive bill and focus on addressing real crime affecting communities across the country. Well done, Canadians have been demanding real action, fixing the broken Liberal bail system, addressing the rise in car thefts and extortion, going after people that are wreaking havoc on streets in this country, not people who dare to express a religious belief the government finds objectionable. Conservatives stand ready as always and look forward to working to fix this broken justice system in Canada. I'm glad the Liberals finally joined us.
Good news? Is that good news from Andrew Lawton, ladies and gentlemen? Finally, something?
Great patriots. Jean Dorion passed away after a lifetime devoted to the cause of Quebec independence. First, he was with the Early Independence Party, RIN. Then he was a founding member of the Parti Québécois. Jean Dorion was chief of staff under René Lévesque, responsible for key issues such as immigration and enforcing the charter of the French language. He chaired the Société Saint-Jean-Baptiste in Montreal, where I had the honor of working alongside him. He represented our nation as Quebec's delegate to Japan, then as a member of the Bloc Québécois here in Ottawa. Jean Dorion fought for his entire life for our language and culture, and for a Quebec that would reach out to everyone. On behalf of the Bloc Québécois, I would like to offer my condolences to his wife, to his 5 children, and to all of the independence activists who are carrying on his fight to make Quebec a country. The Honourable Member for Honoré-Mercier.
Speaker, I rise today to welcome members back to this House and mark the beginning of the new year. We are living in a time of profound global uncertainty. International rules are being challenged, long-standing institutions are under strain, and we are witnessing the emergence of power vacuums and growing instability across regions. In moments like these, Canada must be clear about who we are and what we stand for. This House must come together above partisanship to defend the sovereignty and independence of nations. Mr. Speaker, residents in my riding of Honoré-Mercier have been clear that Canada or Greenland or Denmark belong to them and to them alone. We must stand firm in defense of our sovereignty. Canada will always remain a proud independent nation because, as Prime Minister reminded us, we have the capacity to build our strength at home and to act together. And Canada thrives because we are Canadian. I call on all members of this House to act together to defend Canada's sovereignty. Thank you.
The honourable member for Dufferin-Caledon.
The Prime Minister recently flew to Davos, where he spoke to global elites at the World Economic Forum, and he said that a country unable to feed itself, fuel itself, and defend itself has few options. Here at home, Canadians need action, not carefully crafted speeches. Food inflation is up over 6%, and a record number of Canadians line up to use a food bank every single month despite those empty words. The Liberals fast-tracked Bill C-5 to get major projects built, and yet nothing has been built, and the hope of a pipeline is fading very fast. Our armed forces are under-equipped and are in the midst of a recruiting crisis after 10 years of woke Liberal policies. Talk is cheap, Mr. Speaker. Canadians deserve real action, not carefully crafted words for the elites at Davos.
The honourable member for Milton East, Halton Hills South.
Mr. Speaker, recently I held a town hall in my riding to discuss our government's proposed legislation on public safety, including Bill C-14. This discussion was frank, emotional, and deeply personal. What was clear is that my constituents want action. They are concerned about public safety, they expect results, and they expect Parliament to do its job. Many residents
Your party's been in power for the past 10 years. What are you going on about?
They are frustrated, and they are right to be. Our government is responding to real concerns raised by communities, victims, and law enforcement. The delays are occurring in committee where an opposition party has chosen
The constituents in your riding are clearly brain dead because they keep voting you back in.
Do not help victims. They do not reflect the urgency that Canadians are demanding. Canadians are asking us to work together and to deliver results. Bill C-14 is one important step towards strengthening public safety, and it deserves to move forward. It's time for the opposition to work constructively in committee so Parliament can deliver the action our communities are demanding.
The honourable member for Carlton Trail, Eagle Creek.
While the Prime Minister delivered her speech pointing out the gaps between rhetoric and reality on the world stage, the reality here at home is that Canadians can't eat speeches. Our food inflation is the highest in the G7, and the bill is in. Food costs are now up 6.2%, with groceries up 5%, and restaurant meals up 8.5% year over year. The PM's $78 billion deficit has turned Canada into the food inflation capital of the G7. Instead of delivering affordability, he insists on blaming tariffs from the U.S., which don't even apply to food costs in Canada. A quarter of Canadian households are considered food insecure, with over 2 million people visiting food banks in Canada monthly. And now it is estimated that a family of 4 will pay $1,000 more this year to eat. One thing is clear. Only Canada's Conservatives will put an end to Liberals' food inflation.
L'honorable député.
The honourable member for Longueuil Saint-Hubert. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to wish all of my colleagues a good start to the new session. I took advantage of this break to return to my riding of Longueuil Saint-Hubert to meet with businesses and community organizations. And everyone was very clear with us. They said continue to govern responsibly and coherently, even if that takes courage. They said, we're proud of you. Please continue the excellent work. And they said that to the Prime Minister. I would also like to take the opportunity to underline an unfortunate event. Last Friday, we learned that the former Member of Parliament, Jean Dorion, had died. He represented the riding of Longueuil-Pierre Boucher at the time, which is now Longueuil Saint-Hubert. Regardless of political allegiance, we all recognize his commitment to public service. Thank you.
Cloverdale, Langley City.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has basically just admitted he's failing on affordability. It's so bad, he just had to announce another temporary boost to the GST credit. If prices were actually under control, Canadians wouldn't need another recycled Trudeau-era rebate to put food on the table. Canada now has the highest food inflation in the G7. Food bank use is at record levels, with millions of Canadians relying on emergency food just to feed their family. A tax rebate helps momentarily, but does nothing to address what is actually driving food costs. Carbon taxes on fuel and fertilizer, clean fuel standard, industrial carbon taxes built into every step of the supply chain. The Prime Minister once told Canadians to judge his government by the price at the grocery store, but that measures his policies have failed miserably, and no tax gimmick can hide
The honourable member for Cardigan.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to congratulate Canada's National Heritage Fair winners. Projects that highlight the curiosity and learning among our youth across this nation. One of the winning projects by Cora Lukeman focused on women in farming. It celebrates the strength, the leadership, and the legacy of women in agriculture. Mr. Speaker, picture a young girl holding a bag of PEI potatoes, grown by her aunt in North Lake, packed by her grandfather just down the road, and sold by another aunt in Antigonish, Nova Scotia. This farm-to-table supply chain is rooted in family tradition that has sustained a seventh-generation farming family for over 150 years.
And Carney is slowly selling it all off to China.
He said, "My daughters are smart, they care about the land, and they work hard. That's what makes a good farmer." Today, 1 in 3 farmers in Canada are women. Wow. And more than half of all new farmers in Atlantic Canada are women. They're shaping the future of Canadian agriculture and inspire the next generation.
Oral questions. Questions orales.
All right, here we go. Question period. Mark Carney is not here.
Canadians deserve affordable groceries. But today, we have learned that food inflation in Canada is by far the highest in the G7. It's growing twice as fast as in the U.S., and food inflation has doubled since this Prime Minister came to power. These are, if it truly were external factors behind this, we wouldn't be the worst in the G7. When will the Prime Minister reverse his deficit inflationary taxes so that Canadians can have affordable groceries? The Honourable Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, it's a pleasure to be back, and this Monday we have good news. The Canadian Groceries and Essentials benefits will help 12 million Canadians. And my Conservative friends are happy in their hearts, Mr. Speaker, because they know this represents roughly $1,800 for a family of 4 and roughly $950 for a single person this year. The Liberals support this and Canadians do. Will the Conservatives do as well?
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, after food inflation has doubled under this Prime Minister, and with the worst food inflation in the G7, the checks that the Liberals are announcing today won't even pay for just one grocery shop. Yes, the reality is that the average family will have to spend $17,000 a year for grocery costs. When will the Prime Minister reverse his taxes and inflationary deficits so that Canadians can eat? The Honourable Government House Leader. Mr. Speaker, first and above all, we would like to all express our solidarity with the Leader of the Opposition in this decisive week for him. I am certain he'll be able to convince a majority of his constituents to support his leadership. Second, we welcomed his openness with respect to the legislative measures before this House, and there is a bill that is the Prime Minister's plan for our economy to create jobs and opportunities in Canada. Can he give us a date when we'll be able to vote at third reading of the Budget Implementation Act?
Speaker, Canadians deserve affordable groceries, but under this Prime Minister's watch, food price inflation is the highest in the G7. It's twice as high as in the States, twice as high as when he took office. He can't blame global factors when it's rising faster than any other G7 country. The real cause is his rising taxes on farmers.
I'm going to allow the honourable leader of the opposition to start that question over. I mean, we need start it over there. Start it over there. The honourable member of the opposition. The honourable leader of the opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the Canadian people deserve affordable groceries. Liberals might laugh that off, but they've given Canada the worst food price inflation in the G7. It's rising twice as fast here in Canada as in the United States of America. 2.2 million people lined up at food banks. And since this Prime Minister said that he would make groceries affordable, the inflation rate has actually doubled. Will the Prime Minister finally reverse his inflationary deficits and taxes so Canadians can afford to eat?
The Honourable House, Government House Leader.
The Liberal chair allowing Pierre to start from the beginning.
We certainly want to wish the Leader of the Opposition well in this very decisive and important week for him, and we know that he will have success at his party's convention.
Best of luck. We're rooting for you.
The Prime Minister's plan to grow our economy, to create $1 trillion in investment, and to protect our workers and our industries from trade threats is before this House, Bill C-15. Now, we take very, very well the Leader's openness on working with us on legislation. Can he give us a date, just a date, the next words out of his mouth, give us the date where we can have third reading on the BIA, Mr. Speaker?
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Well, Mr. Speaker, in the spirit of solidarity, why won't they agree with the Canadian people that we should get rid of all the hidden taxes that they've imposed on groceries? There's the Liberal fuel standard tax, which is 7 cents a litre on farmers, truckers, and those who bring us our food. There's the industrial carbon tax on farm equipment and fertilizer. All of this has given Canada the worst food price inflation in the G7. Our food costs are rising twice as fast as in the United States of America, and now they promise to recycle a Trudeau-era rebate that won't even cover one trip to the grocery store, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
I know that it's a particularly challenging week for the Leader of the Opposition, but let me help him because today we have good news for Canadians, Mr. Speaker. It's called the Canada Grocery and Essentials Benefit, Mr. Speaker. I know in his heart he's rejoicing, Mr. Speaker, because he's been asking questions in this House. Now we have delivered for Canadians, Mr. Speaker. The real question, all the Liberals MP are going to vote in favor. Canadians are in favor. Will the Conservative be good for their word and vote with us to help Canadians?
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, only the Liberals would look at the $17,600 that the average family has to spend on groceries and say that it's a time to rejoice. They say that Canadians should be grateful that to be lined up in record numbers at the food bank. They think Canadians should thank them for having the highest food inflation in the G7, twice as bad as the United States of America. They think that Canadians should give Liberals gratitude for having doubled food price inflation since this Prime Minister was elected, promising to be judged by the prices at the grocery store. Why won't they reverse their Liberal taxes and debt so we can...
The Honourable Minister of Jobs and Family.
Mr. Speaker, it's a good news for Canadians who are struggling today. In fact, up to $1,900 more for a Canadian family to help with those costs of living that the Conservatives have been talking about all fall, Mr. Speaker. In fact, the MP from Edmonton, Manning, told a story about Enid, who is struggling with the cost of groceries. Is he going to vote against Enid's desire to have more money to buy groceries?
Wow. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the reality is that Eden is paying, and his family are paying a record high price. If Eden is part of a family of 4, that family will spend over $17,000 on groceries this year. That's $1,000 more than they did last year. That's the fastest increase in the G7. And now the Prime Minister has revived a Trudeau-era rebate, which will let pass, that will barely cover a few trips to the grocery store, while the average family spends $17,000 plus. Why doesn't the Liberals stop increasing grocery prices by getting rid of their inflationary deficits and taxes on food?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I know that the Leader of the Opposition is a bit concerned about the week ahead, but let me quote a letter he sent us on January 24th, Mr. Speaker. We wouldn't assume that it would be good for his words. He said, if you have other ideas that make food affordable, we will fast-track them, Mr. Speaker. Well, I have good news for him. It's called the Canada Grocery and Essentials Benefit, Mr. Speaker, helping 12 million Canadians. The question we have on this side, will he stand up in this House? Will he be good for his word and support 12 million Canadians that are expecting this government and this House to support them?
The Honourable Member for Saint-Jean. Mr. Speaker, Quebecers and French Canadians learned something new last Thursday. According to the Prime Minister, the Battle of the Plains of Abraham was not a conquest by the English, it was the beginning of a great partnership. According to him, the ancestors of Quebecers and English Canadians rose from the battlefield that morning and said to each other, "Guys, let's stop fighting, celebrate our differences, and build Canada." Mr. Speaker, if the Prime Minister wants to create some new heritage minutes, will he review his history rather than rewrite it? The Honourable Government House Leader. Mr. Speaker, English Canadians and French Canadians built a very great country, one that is the best in the world. We created great prosperity and mutual respect for our official languages and human rights, Mr. Speaker. No one, not the Bloc, will minimize this accomplishment. Nevertheless, Mr. Speaker, we're going to continue to work with what concerns Quebecers, i.e. affordability, job creation, prosperity creation together, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Member for Saint-Jean. Mr. Speaker, if you listen to the Prime Minister, when French was banned from being taught in the Maritimes, in Manitoba, in Saskatchewan, in Alberta, and in Ontario, it wasn't to erase us, no. It was to bring us together. When Quebecers were excluded from power and business, it was for their own good. When the founder of Canada said that Louis Riel would be hanged even if all the dogs in Quebec barked in his favour, we just misrepresented his love of pooches. Mr. Speaker, when is this Prime Minister going to learn our history for real? The Honourable Government House Leader. Mr. Speaker, she's talking to a Government House Leader that is the proud ancestor of Scottish immigrants who studied in French in Prince Edward Island, who did his undergrad at the Acadian University in Moncton, and who lives his life in French, and who was elected 4 times in a riding that is 90% francophone. That is possible in Canada when we have mutual respect between Anglophones, and we've created the best country in the world. Vive le Canada. The Honourable Member for Saint-Jean. Mr. Speaker, a little reminder historically. There's a reason why these questions are being asked in a parliament here in Ottawa. It's because English speakers preferred to burn down the parliament in Montreal rather than compensate French Canadians who had their farms burned during the 1837 rebellion. What a terrible partnership. The Liberal lieutenant from Quebec defended the Prime Minister by saying that it was just a different perspective on history. Well, history is facts, not opinions. So instead of defending these alternative facts from the Prime Minister, will we teach him our history? The Honourable Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, I've noticed that my Bloc colleagues were talking about history, but I can tell you one thing that Canadians want to talk about and Quebecers want to talk about. That's talking about their city. Right now, those people in my riding in Quebec, they want a government that is building the future. They want investment and support for families because Quebecers' first priority is affordability. And today, we're showing up with the Canadian a grocery benefit to put food on the table. We'll always be here to defend Quebec and Quebecers.
Regina Capel.
The Prime Minister asked to be judged on inflation on grocery prices. Well, food inflation has doubled to the highest in the G7 and has doubled the U.S. rate. This is a homegrown problem of high Liberal taxes on farmers, fertilizer and food processors, and rampant inflationary deficits. Today's recycled Trudeau-era rebate will barely cover one trip to the store for the average family. They now need to spend over $17,000 a year on groceries. It didn't work when Trudeau tried it. Prices kept rising. There's nothing in today's announcement that will make anything cost less. So instead of temporary measures, why not permanently scrap Liberal hidden taxes that drive up food costs?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Financial Institutions.
Mr. Speaker, while that leader focuses on hanging on to his leadership, we're focused on affordability for Canadians. Our new groceries and essentials benefit will help more than 12 million Canadians with food inflation. That's $1,900 for a family of four, Mr. Speaker. It's time for the Conservatives. It's time for Canadians to tell Conservatives to stop the obstruction. Let's build Canada together. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Regina Capel.
Your plan didn't work for Justin Trudeau. I don't know why they think it will work today. And earlier today, the Prime Minister tried to blame inflation on global factors, but all the other countries in the G7 have lower food inflation than Canada. The Liberal fuel standards tax didn't invade us from another country. That already adds 7 cents a litre and is set to rise to 17. The industrial Liberal carbon tax didn't come from away either. Working families who can't afford beef know that today's announcement won't even cover one trip to the grocery store. So why not stop trying recycling failed Trudeau policies and adopt common sense Conservative measures to scrap Liberal taxes on food?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Natural
Mr.
Resources.
Speaker, speaking of recycling, we've got the 2015 playbook here in 2026, and it's just not going to work. Canadians know that the environment, economy, trade, reconciliation, these are all related, and Canadians in Conservative ridings expect better than obstruction and speak and spell politics, where we get one of 5 answers to every problem. Listen, on this side, there's new programs for affordability, economic growth, building big things, and this is a big moment for this country. I invite the members opposite to join us to see the world as it is and to build Canada strong.
The Honourable Member for Calgary East.
Canada first in the G7 for food inflation. Canada's food inflation is double the U.S. at 6.2%. Essentials like lettuce, beef, baby formula, and apples are all hit with Liberal inflation. Conservatives will fast-track any proposal that will reverse having the highest food inflation in the G7. That includes eliminating the industrial carbon tax, Liberal fuel standards, cutting red tape, and boosting competition. Will the Liberals introduce this immediately?
The Honourable Minister of Agriculture
Thank you, Mr.
and
Speaker.
Agri-Food.
Mr. Speaker, our government is focused on delivering support where it's needed. I can't understand why the opposition is so against that, Mr. Speaker. By taking action now, we're helping farmers manage essential costs, improving affordability, strengthening a more resilient food system, Mr. Speaker. 12 million Canadians are going to be affected by this, Mr.
right.
Speaker. It's going to help our domestic production, it's going to help our farmers and ranchers, and it's going to help our economy. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Calgary East.
Giving Canadians the money back the Liberals took from them in the first place doesn't lower grocery costs. The Prime Minister can't blame global factors either, when all other G7 nations have lower food inflation than Canada does. Liberals raise taxes on farmers, fertilizer, food processors, all while doubling the deficit. Will the Liberals reverse these failed policies, or is having the highest food inflation in the G7 the only Liberal promise they're willing to keep?
The Honourable Minister for Artificial Intelligence and Digital Innovation.
Well, the party of no, Mr. Speaker, keeps standing in the way of bringing down the cost of living for Canadians. We're saying yes. Today, the groceries and essential benefit will give 12 million Canadians support to put food on the table, saving the average family of 4 almost $1,900 and the average individual almost $900. We're saying yes to supporting families. We're saying yes to making life more affordable. We're saying yes to real solutions. Why doesn't the party of no support Canadians and start saying yes as well?
The Honourable Member for Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands.
The Prime Minister said a country that can't feed itself, fuel itself, or defend itself has few options. And he's right. And Canadians are looking for the Prime Minister's words to match his actions. Now, tomorrow, Conservatives are going to introduce a motion to pass the Canadian Sovereignty Act. It's going to cut taxes and it's going to let investors invest and builders build. The question is very simple. At this critical time for our country, will the government say yes, and will they support the Canadian Sovereignty Act?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
So, Mr. Speaker, there is a bill before this Parliament that lets investors invest, that lets builders build, and in fact attracts $1 trillion, with a T, trillion dollars of investment in our country that will protect our workers and build our industries. It is the Budget Implementation Act. Now, Canadians in Conservative ridings are telling us they want this Parliament to work, that they want to endorse the Prime Minister's plan to create growth in this country. Can that member give us a date, just a date, where we will have third reading and pass the Prime Minister's plan for prosperity in Canada?
The Honourable Member for Charlesbourg-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister seems open to our proposal to move faster to help Canadians. That's fantastic. But he's also promised affordable groceries for Canadians. On this side of the House, we're eager to quickly pass proposals aimed at reversing food inflation, such as measures that stimulate competition in the food chain. Tomorrow, we'll table a motion to pass the Canadian Sovereignty Act. Will your government table legislation to reduce the cost of groceries? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Mr. Speaker, I'm very happy to rise and wish everyone a Happy New Year. And it's already a good year for Canadians today. More than 12 million Canadians will see their purchasing power increase. That's what they need to face rising prices in grocery stores, greater purchasing power, and that's our objective. I hope my colleagues will support us in this action. I'd like to thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Member for Charlesbourg-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, we already said we'd pass this, but we need to go further. And it's time to reward businesses and workers who build and invest in Canada, and we must protect Canadian innovation. We are proposing creating a tax credit for reinvestment in Canada to stimulate domestic industrial activity, and protecting Canadian innovation by requiring the Minister of Industry to present a plan to prevent the sale of Canadian innovations, discoveries, and innovations to other countries. Will you support our motion and introduce a bill to this effect?
Honourable Minister of Indigenous Services.
Bonjour. Hello, everyone. Happy New Year, Mr. Speaker. We're working together on new measures to help families and to put food on the table. In my riding, a single mother of a family will see her purchasing power increase, and also there'll be new measures to help her buy shoes and pay for daycare after school. It won't just be helping people in my riding, but also it'll be the same thing on the other side of the House in their ridings. So I would ask them to work with us. And inaudible. The Honourable Member for Drummond. Mr. Speaker, it was on a sunny day in September 1759 that the beautiful partnership between the French and the English began. This beautiful friendship, born on the plains of Abraham, would give rise to moments filled with affection: the ban on French in schools, the hanging of the Patriots, the Durham Report, the execution of Louis Riel, the Quebec City riot during conscription, the War Measures Act, the Night of the Long Knives, and the failure of the Meech Lake Accord, and so on. Could it be that this Prime Minister is unfamiliar with the history of Quebecers and Francophones? He has no knowledge of it in Canada. The Honourable Minister of Canadian Identity and Culture. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First, I'd like to wish a Happy New Year to the Bloc, or their militant arm of the Parti Québécois. Well, I think what bothers them the most is the Prime Minister's message was a national one. But I'd like to ask them a question. Did they ask permission from Mr. Plamondon to ask their question? Because He's going to move on to something else. He is having an argument with the bonhomme of the Quebec Carnival. You can't invent that. The honourable member for Drummond. Mr. Speaker, they're rewriting the facts. It's contagious and spreading through the entire Liberal caucus. And according to the Prime Minister, Montcalm declared on his deathbed, "I die disappointed because I will not live to see the surrender of English in Quebec. The truth is that we were conquered, and since then the federal government is just trying to keep us in line. But the Prime Minister has chosen to rewrite history, assuming that Quebecers do not know it. And instead of spouting nonsense about the Plains of Abraham and insulting our intelligence, what is the Prime Minister waiting for? To pick up a book and learn a bit more about Quebec. It's about time." The Honourable Government House Leader. Mr. Speaker, Quebecers have been telling us out loud to work on affordability and help them make ends meet at the end of the month, to take efforts on rent, on lodging, and to protect our industries such as softwood lumber, aluminum, and in general, to prevent them from tariff threats in a very complex world while still protecting their culture and language, Mr. Speaker. And that is what the federal government and the Liberal Party are doing this year.
The honourable member for Long Range Mountains.
Mr. Speaker, Stats Canada confirms what Canadian families already know at the checkout. Food inflation has jumped by 6.2% in the last year. Grocery prices are up 5%, and Canada now has the highest food inflation in the G7. Newfoundland and Labrador has the second highest food inflation rate in the entire country, and higher transportation costs mean local families are hit even harder. Conservatives are ready to fast-track measures to bring food prices down. So will the government eliminate the industrial carbon tax and the 17 cents a litre fuel standards tax so Canadians can afford the basics?
The Honourable Minister of Fisheries and Oceans.
And I wish the member opposite, the opposition member from Newfoundland and Labrador, Happy New Year. And I want to just give a couple of stats. The Canada Groceries and Essential Benefit, specific for our province. A family of 4 this year will get over $1,890. And then the next 4 years, $1,400 a year. A single person, $950 with the top up, and then $700 going forward. Her constituents are telling me they want action, stop the obstruction, and work for the people.
The honourable member for Long Range Mountains.
We are ready to work with the government on real long-term solutions instead of recycled temporary Trudeau-era rebates. Canada has been called the food inflation capital of the G7. Mr. Speaker, that's real hardship. People back home ask me, how far does this have to go before it stops? The Prime Minister can't blame global factors when all other countries have lower food price inflation than Canada. It's a homegrown problem of high Liberal taxes. So will this government focus on actually bringing down food prices, or will it defend policies that make food more expensive?
The Honourable Minister.
Speaker, and I'll tell you what's recycled. And the tired notes that the Conservative members and from Newfoundland and Labrador as well just continue to repeat. The point is they consistently vote against support that help families, help the people that they talk about in their ridings, that I hear from, that want them to support. Stop the nonsense, work together, and let's grow Canada.
Member for Cambridge.
Mr. Speaker, Canada is now the inflation capital of the G7. Food prices are rising faster than families can keep up, twice the rate of the U.S. And recycled Trudeau-era rebates do not fix the problem. Canadians can't eat the paper on which this Prime Minister's empty promises are written. Restaurants are being squeezed out of business with higher food costs, and Canadians are cutting back because they can't afford to eat. Conservatives are ready to work on long-term solutions Canadians can feel at the checkout, like cutting the industrial carbon tax and the fuel standard tax to bring prices down. Will the Prime Minister work with us, or does he consider the food bank the new order of fine dining for Canadians?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, $1,900 per family is real money that will help Canadians pay for groceries, pay for schools, pay for their activities for their children, Mr. Speaker. Canadians in Conservative-held ridings want to benefit from this support from our government. Right. Why are the Conservatives blocking systematically every time we want to help Canadians?
Hear, hear.
The Honourable Member for Lévis-Lotbinière. Mr. Speaker, it's expensive to eat in Canada, and it costs a lot more here than elsewhere. There's no other country in the G7 where it costs more to eat than in Canada. Ground beef, you can't afford it anymore. It's 70% more expensive. Apples are up by 10%, lettuce by 13%, oranges up by 15%, ground coffee 42%. Mr. Speaker, is the Liberal government in the tomato business? Because that's the only thing that's gone down. The Honourable Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, coming from a star on Infoman, I'm not surprised to hear that question, Mr. Speaker. But, you know, I have a lot of admiration for that colleague, but he's a bit behind. He's a few days behind because now we have the Canada Groceries and Essentials benefit. Young people are happy about it, Mr. Speaker, and I know that in his heart the member is happy that we have it as well. But is he going to rise in this House and help the 12 million Canadians vote in favour of that measure and say that the Liberal government's doing good things for Canadians? The Honourable Member for Lévis-Lotbinière. Mr. Speaker, you don't buy votes, you earn them. The most recent data shows that food inflation is up by 6.2%, putting Canada first place in food inflation in the G7. The Prime Minister can't blame the rest of the planet. This is a homegrown problem caused by high Liberal taxes on our farmers. Mr. Speaker, will the government immediately commit to tabling a law which will eliminate the hidden taxes on food? The Honourable Minister of Indigenous Services. Mr. Speaker, I would like to ensure that my colleague understands that we're here to help Canadians, not just with food, but also with the cost of living. For example, daycare costs. Costs that are hard to plan for. Mr. Speaker, we ask our colleagues to follow what their leader said in his open letter. I ask them to be open to working with the government to help 12 million Canadians. Please.
The Honourable Member for South Shore St. Margaret's.
Mr. Speaker, when I was back home in my riding, I had many conversations with people in my community about how important the school food program was to families in my riding of South Shore St. Margaret's. Can the Minister of Environment, Climate Change and Nature please update the House on how the government will deliver real, near-term relief for Canadians facing higher costs of living? Thank you.
Minister of Environment, Climate Change and Nature.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I think it's great because the member from South Shore St. Mark's is going to be able to go back home this weekend and talk to families about the Canada Groceries and Essentials benefit. That is going to help a family of four with almost $1,900 a year. That's going to help over 12 million people right across the country. It's her hard work that's delivering these results. Not only that, we have made the National School Food Program permanent, the dental benefit supporting families, Canada Child Care, and the Canada Child Benefit. There's such a long list. I could go on forever. We're going to continue working for Canadians.
The Honourable Member for Bellechasse-les-Etchemins-Lévis. Eating healthily has become a luxury, Mr. Speaker. The numbers hurt. The price of beef is up by 16.8%, lettuce 12.8%, apples 10%. Under this government, preparing a simple salad has become a major investment, Mr. Speaker. Even coffee's 41% more expensive. When will the government stop taxing our farmers and our truckers? And will it commit today to cutting the industrial carbon tax and the tax on fuel standards? The Honourable Minister of Health. Well, I would like to thank my colleague for her question. And as Minister of Health, I absolutely want Canadians to eat well. And that is why we've put in place this measure today that will give Canadians more money in their pockets to help them get through these difficult times. So, As I was saying, in my riding, a family of 4 needs this help, and they'll receive almost $1,900 this year. So we are taking measures to help Canadians transition through this difficult time. The Honourable Member for Bellechasse, Des-Etchemins-Lévis. Mr. Speaker, the Liberal announcement this morning is just a Band-Aid. It's not a real solution for the 2.2 million Canadians who are going to continue to go to food banks. Canada has the highest food inflation in the G7 because of Liberal taxes. And it's killing local businesses. 7,000 restaurants closed in 2025. 4,000 more will probably close this year. Will the government eliminate the tax that is making transport more expensive and making food more expensive? The Honourable Secretary of State for Youth. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We are helping Canadians with the cost of living by reducing costs with a rebate of almost $1,900 for a family of 4. That's on top of other investments like the tax cut for 22 million Canadians and a savings of $800 for children with young kids who benefit from the school food program. We're there to help Canadians and families go forward. The Conservative Party should stop with these games of obstruction in Parliament and support these initiatives.
Honourable Member for Oshawa.
Mr. Speaker, if we judge the Prime Minister by prices at the grocery store, as he said, he's failed. Canada's food inflation now sits at 6.2%, the highest in the G7. Conservatives are ready to fast-track real relief by scrapping the industrial carbon tax, eliminating the ever-increasing fuel standards tax, boosting competition in grocery stores, and cutting red tape for farmers. When will the Prime Minister stop offering Band-Aid solutions and work with Conservatives to bring food prices down once and for all?
Well said. Well said. Secretary of State for Sport.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The Canadian Groceries and Essentials benefit will put food directly onto the tables of hardworking Canadian families. And not just a few, Mr. Speaker. We're talking about 12 million Canadians, Mr. Speaker. But only Conservatives are willing to stand in the way of affordability for families that need a little bit of help, Mr. Speaker. This Liberal government has the backs of Canadians. Well, that Conservative leader turned his back on helping Canadians a long, long time ago. Now, Mr. Speaker, I know that Conservative leader is obsessed with his grip on power right now and probably can't focus on much else. But if he could focus on what Canadians need and helping them out at the grocery store, we could use his vote. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Oshawa.
Mr. Speaker, enough with the temporary and recycled Trudeau-era rebates, and enough with blaming global factors when all the other countries have lower food price inflation than Canada. Yep. This is a homegrown problem, and we need long-term solutions. My recent visit to Simcoe Hall Food Bank with the Conservative leader was yet another reminder that more working families are struggling and visiting food banks. Will the Prime Minister stop treating the House of Commons as the House of Elites and finally work with Conservatives to bring food prices down for Canadians?
Yeah. The Honourable Secretary of State for Sport.
Mr. Speaker, it's always pretty fresh to hear the Conservatives talk about elitism when they're talking down supports for hardworking Canadians, Mr. Speaker. 12 million Canadians are going to benefit from the Canadian Groceries and Essentials benefit, Mr. Speaker. And from a personal perspective, when my hardworking single mom got that benefit 4 times a year, that meant running shoes for me and my brother. That meant guitar lessons for me and my brother. That meant fresher food and maybe a trip to Swiss Chalet, Mr. Speaker. But those Conservatives have never cared about affordability or lower-income families, Mr. Speaker. They're only here to help their rich oil and gas friends with this nonsense on hidden taxes that doesn't exist, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Vaughan Woodbridge.
Mr. Speaker, Canada now faces the highest food inflation in the G7. The government's response has relied largely on short-term relief measures that may ease pressure temporarily but do nothing to address the underlying drivers of rising food costs. Food affordability requires deeper structural action. Conservatives have put forward practical solutions, including eliminating the industrial carbon tax and fuel standards tax, boosting competition in the grocery sector, and cutting red tape for farmers. So will the government work with Conservatives to deliver lasting relief for Canadian families? Great question.
Honourable Secretary of State for Labour.
Day one, our focus has been on lowering costs for families
and putting money in their pockets. Today's announcement of the new Canada Groceries and Essentials benefit will give Canadians the relief they need. But more than that, Mr. Speaker, we have delivered a tax cut. We have protected the Canada Child benefit and grew it. We've reduced childcare costs. We have cut the carbon tax, Mr. Speaker. We've delivered dental care. Building Canada Homes. We're building low affordable housing, Mr. Speaker. Made the National School Food Program permanent. Mr. Speaker, my question is, voters in Vaughan want this stuff. Why is the member obstructing? Get out of the way.
The honourable member for Battleford, Lloydminster, Meadow Lake.
Well, Mr. Speaker, if those measures worked, Canadians would actually be able to afford their groceries.
Yes.
Lettuce is
Yes.
up 12%, beef 16%, apples 10%, and even baby formula is up another 6%. After 10 years of liberal inflation and taxes, Canada now leads the G7 with the highest food inflation. Conservatives are ready to fast-track solutions. Eliminate the industrial carbon tax, cut the fuel standards tax, boost grocery competition, and cut red tape for farmers. Will the Liberal government introduce legislation to implement these solutions and to work with us to finally lower the price of food for Canadians?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Northern and Arctic Affairs. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'm not sure which Saskatchewan people that member is speaking with, Mr. Speaker, but the Saskatchewan people that I'm speaking to, they talk about the $10 a day daycare. They talk about the reduction of GSTs on home. They talk about the school food program. Now they'll talk about the Canada Groceries and Essential benefit, $11.7 billion that'll help many Saskatchewan families, Mr. Speaker. Saskatchewan families don't ask for much, just a fair shot and some breathing room at the end of the month, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable member for Oxford.
Liberal laws ended mandatory jail time for extortionists and released repeat violent offenders back on our streets. Since then, violent crime has doubled and extortion is up over 350%. Businesses, media studios, and homes are being shot at. Literally, we're seeing bullets fly through the bedrooms of our children. Canadians are terrified, and they feel like they're the ones on house arrest while the criminals walk free. So when will this Liberal government stop making excuses, work with us, take action, and protect Canadians?
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, at the outset, let me just thank and congratulate the members of the RCMP for their work in the arrest of Ryan Wedding in collaboration with the FBI, Mr. Speaker. Ryan Wedding was the #1 wanted person in the United States, and this is the type of collaboration that law enforcement in Canada, working with the United States, can achieve. To the member's question, Mr. Speaker, we have 6 bills in front of the House that deal with public safety. The obstruction of the Conservative Party in passing not a single one of them is atrocious, Mr. Speaker. I invite the member opposite to pass these bills today.
The Honourable Member for Mission Matsuquit Abbotsford.
Mr. Speaker, extortion cases are exploding, and it's a full-on crisis. In Surrey alone, police are responding to more than 1 case a day. Families and small businesses are terrified. Truckers are feeling the heat, and people feel abandoned by Justice Canada. After years of Liberal promises, the results speak for themselves. Crime is up and criminals walk free. Bill C5 and C75 strip mandatory minimums and entrench catch-and-release policies. When will this government work in good faith with the Conservatives to eliminate mandatory minimums for extortionists and repeal the catch-and-release laws that are hurting our country?
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Mr. Speaker, it is easy to make mistakes when you read a question that was handed to you from your party's whip, rather than actually do research to understand the facts on the ground. If the honourable member actually surveyed the statistics on violent crime in Canada, he would see the last 2 years there has been a reduction of crime in this country. The bills he points to actually made it harder for someone to get bail if they were charged with offences touching on intimate partner violence, and made house arrest impossible for serious charges, including advocating genocide, torture, and murder. Mr. Speaker, we have put forward a plan that is going to treat violent repeat criminals with serious laws that help protect communities against crime. I hope the Conservatives.
The Honourable Member for Abbotsford South Langley.
Mr. Speaker, since January 1st, there's been a minimum of one extortion case every single day in the Lower Mainland. Wow. These are real consequences of the Liberals' failure to take crime seriously. Families and businesses across Abbotsford and Surrey are terrified, and entire communities are living in fear. It's time for the Liberals to fix their soft on crime laws that have failed to keep innocent Canadians safe. When will the Liberals stop delaying, finally work with us, and restore mandatory minimum for extortionists and repeal their catch and release laws C5 and C75?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Combating Crime.
Mr. Speaker, in Canada, someone who commits extortion can serve up to 25 years in prison.
That's right.
We have the laws in place, Mr. Speaker, but we're going to improve on those laws. That's why we've put forward a bail and sentencing reform. I'm glad to see that it's progressing through committee. But one law, in fact, Mr. Speaker, that can really help in these cases is lawful access. It was the second bill we presented in this House. The Conservatives have been obstructing it all along. We had several different summits across this country, and what did law enforcement ask for? They asked for lawful access, Mr. Speaker. Stop the obstruction.
The Honourable Member for Beauport-Limoilou. Mr. Speaker, in Beauport-Limoilou, as across the country, the cost of living is too high for many families. Our government has already taken concrete steps, such as cutting the consumer carbon tax, putting in place a tax cut for 20 million middle-class Canadians, and cutting the GST for first-time homebuyers. But we know that we can and should do more to help Canadians deal with inflation. Can the Minister of Finance please inform this House of concrete measures that we are taking to support families in Beauport-Limoilou and across the country?
No.
The Honourable Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank my colleague for that excellent question, because he's really shown Canadians all of the measures that we've taken to help people. And today, Mr. Speaker, it's 12 million Canadians across the country who can celebrate because we've put in place the new Canada Groceries and Essentials benefit. Mr. Speaker, this is going to make a real difference for families. It's going to allow the mom of a single family, to buy food, clothes for her kids. It's going to help Canadians across the country. We're always going to be there to help Canadians, and we're always going to build strong communities.
Island, Powell River.
Mr. Speaker, last week was a devastating one for forestry workers and their families on Vancouver Island. Just outside Port McNeill, the Atlee chip plant announced it would be permanently closed. Curtailments announced in Ladysmith and Saltaire, and at the iconic Chemainus sawmill where my grandfather worked for 20 years. These were good-paying jobs, the type that built communities up and down Vancouver Island and right across BC. This government promised to stand with these workers, to have their backs. Instead, mills keep on closing, workers laid off. When will this government's actions and results finally live up to its rhetoric and its words?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Natural Resources.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. This government stands with forestry workers. We've announced $2.5 billion in supports. We have a task force active right now looking at additional supports. I was in Prince George last week. Members in Conservative ridings want results. And I want to tell you a little bit of a story, Mr. Speaker. Last time we talked about this in the House of Commons, we got suggestions from the NDP. We put them into effect. We got suggestions from the Bloc. We put them into effect. We got no suggestions from the Conservatives. We want their help. We want to support this sector. We're tired of hearing noun, verb, and no solution every time these guys open their mouth.
The Honourable Member for North Island, Powell River.
Here's a suggestion, Mr. Speaker. Drop the ideological 30 by 30 that stops forestry workers from doing their job. I appreciate my colleagues' comments on this issue. I do appreciate the government's promises of support, but forestry workers in my riding and across BC can't eat Liberal promises, and they can't pay their mortgage with a Liberal speech. They need action. They need results. They need this government to actually deliver something. Literally thousands of jobs have been lost. How many more mills have to close? How many more people have to be put out of work before this Liberal government steps up and takes this crisis?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
30 by 30. I can't think of a more out-of-touch comment. They're clearly not talking to people on the ground. These are not the challenges the sector faces. We need solutions, not obstruction from the members opposite. I am welcoming them to work with us. We want to help them out. We need their help because they are the people on the ground representing Conservative ridings with Mills, and we're not hearing from them. They deserve better, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Kenora Kiiwetinoong.
Bear Falls Sawmill has been shut down since October. The Ignace Mill is expected to close in March, and now 150 people will be affected by the closure of a line at Thunder Bay Pulp and Paper. Mr. Speaker, every day more closures are announced, and these are good-paying jobs for hard-working Canadians that are now gone. The government's rhetoric about supporting workers is not matching the reality of the workers who are losing their jobs. Conservatives stand ready in this House to support government actions that will save forestry jobs. So, Mr. Speaker, when will we finally see some action from this Liberal government?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, forestry, mill jobs, the forest sector in Canada is part of the very fibre of our country, part of the very fibre of our communities. The Parliamentary Secretary just outlined the many measures that we are putting in place to make sure that we protect those workers and those facilities against what is an ill-advised trade war that only increases the costs of housing in the United States and elsewhere. We're going to put those people to work producing wood, mass timber, building homes, Mr. Speaker. We're going to do that in the face of Conservative.
The honourable member for Labrador.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians have a proud history of standing with our allies during combat missions and during peacekeeping exercises. In my riding of Labrador, home of Canadian Forces Base Goose Bay, many families serve our country or stand behind our loved ones who do. When Canada's contributions are mischaracterized or minimized, it's important to set the record straight. Can the Minister of Veteran Affairs tell the House how Canada has stood alongside our allies and how we properly commemorate and recognize our veterans? Thank you.
Minister of Veterans Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, I thank my colleague from Labrador for the question. When NATO invoked Article 5 after 9/11, we fought the Taliban alongside our allies in Afghanistan. 40,000 Canadians deployed. 158 CAF soldiers made the ultimate sacrifice. 30 Canadian soldiers received the U.S. Bronze Star for their bravery. The Canadian Armed Forces have and continue to make invaluable contributions around the world. As a nation, Canada will always stand with our allies, including the U.S. As Canadians, we stand behind the women and men in uniform who serve.
The honourable member for Selkirk, Interlake, Eastman.
Every drop of Canada's iconic award-winning Crown Royal whiskey is proudly made in Gimli, Manitoba, using Manitoba grains and pure Interlake water. Unfortunately, Manitoba employees and farmers are worried because the government of Ontario is threatening to pull Crown Royal off the shelves of their liquor stores. The Prime Minister incorrectly claimed he has torn down interprovincial trade barriers when in fact he's been sitting on the sideline, and his silence on Ontario's threat to Manitoba is deafening. Will the Liberals stand up for Canadian jobs and pass the Conservatives' Canadian Sovereignty Act to remove barriers to interprovincial free trade?
The honourable Minister responsible for Canada-U.S. economic relations.
Mr. Speaker, I want to begin by wishing colleagues, of course, a Happy New Year, and particularly our friend from Manitoba who just asked the question, to thank the Conservative Party for their support last June in passing federal legislation in this House, Mr. Speaker, which did exactly that, eliminated all federal barriers to interprovincial trade. Now, Mr. Speaker, the challenge is to work with our partners in the provinces. Good news, the Prime Minister has the Premiers for dinner in Ottawa on Wednesday, an all-day meeting on Thursday, and we will be discussing exactly those issues of continuing to remove those barriers.
The honourable member for Edmonton Strathcona.
Mr. Speaker, families in
Edmonton, Strathcona, and across the country cannot wait until June to get help with their groceries. In 2022, the House passed legislation and there was an emergency payment done in weeks. Instead of making Canadians wait for months, will the Prime Minister work with the NDP to get help for Canadians immediately? And, Mr. Speaker, if they are interested in lowering the rate for groceries, will they please take the GST off all grocery essentials, finally impose a price tag and tax excess profits to stop Canadians getting gouged by big corporate interests? Thank you.
The Honourable Minister for Emergency Management and Community Resilience.
Mr. Speaker, this morning the Prime Minister introduced the new Canada Groceries and Essential Benefits. I look forward to returning to Alberta this weekend and sharing with my constituents that a family of 4 can receive up to almost $1,900 to help pay for groceries and other essentials. This is the kind of support Canadians are looking for. As Canadians, we look after each other. We're asking the opposition members to help us do just that.
I wish to draw the attention of members to the presence in the gallery of the recipients of the 2025 Governor General's History Awards.
All right, that's going to do it for today's live stream. Thank you all for joining. I will be live roughly around the same time tomorrow, 1 p.m., 1:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's going to do it for me. Thank you for joining on YouTube, Rumble, and Kick. Adios, everybody. Have a great rest of your day or night.
Allow members to who have to leave quietly. Et après ça, on poursuivra avec.
And after that, we will continue with the daily routine of business.